Okay, so I'm going to show you today freehand drawing how to do it. So here we go. First thing we need to find out is you got to get the unit of measure. Anything that starts, anything the unit of measure, wherever it is. And in this case, we're going to use the ball because it has to be in reference to that. So in other words, the still life, any image has to be in relationship to this unit of measure, because if you don't do that, you're going to have, for example, objects here are going to be different sizes. Some of them might be bigger, some might be smaller in reference to the ball. The ball is the unit of measure. So what you have to do is you have to use from the furthest right section point to the furthest left point. How many of these unit of measures, these balls, I guess, spheres, how many does it take to go across? And in this case, it takes 7 1/4. So you have the length. Now you got to find the height. So it's 1, 2, 3, and a little bit more. And therefore, it'll be 7 1/4 and 3. We'll just round it off. Now, by doing that, how are you going to transfer this to the drawing? So how would I do it to transfer it to your own paper? Well, you have to come up with a length that's going to fit. In other words, you can make it small, you can make it big. You have to come up with a length that's going to fit on an 18 by 24 piece of paper. In my case, I use this length right here. So I do it 7 times over, like that. Now I get the length. Now remember the length is 7 1/4. Now I got to get the height. So I do this. I start from the bottom and then I just work my way up. So you get, and then it's 3 and a little bit more, but we'll as I said, we'll round it off to 3. All right, so you do that. So then what's the next step? Well, you should have something like this. By doing the 7 length, 3 height, you should have a rectangle this way, like this. Now, what would be the next step? The next step is you need to get the platform, because you need to figure that thing out. The platform is what's in yellow here. Now, how do I go about doing that? Well, here's the thing. Whatever point you see on the left and the right, you will use the height. Okay, well, how would you do that? Well, you just do this. You go, here's 1, here's 2. Look at the point, and then just go this way. So it's 1, 2 and a half, because the point is right there, and it goes down. So it's 1 and 2 and a half. So, okay, so I go 1, 2 and a half. There you go. That's 1 point. All right. How about the other point? Well, it's 1 and then maybe 3/4, right? You make a line this way, like that. It's 1 3/4. So then you have 1 there and a quarter right there. There you go. Now, as I said, you guys probably be best if you put the horizontal markings, which are these, put them at the bottom. The vertical, the height, in other words, the length markings, you put them at the bottom. The height, you put it to the side. It'll be much easier for you guys. All right, so then we figure that point. So the side points, that we use the length, the height. The bottom points, we're gonna use the length. Okay, so then we go, look at this point. You go all the way up, and it's 1, 2. So you go 1, 2, and then the point, there you go. So look at over here, 1, 2, point. See, there you go. And then it's the same thing with the other ones. And once you're done, you just connect the points. Simple as that. Okay, now the next problem is, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna put the actual objects on there? All right, so here's the thing. The first thing you need to figure out is remember what we talked about. What does this look like? This looks like a grid without all the vertical lines and all the horizontal lines. You only have a certain number of lines that are you just using as a to help out, in other words. So in other words, so you almost using those lines as a guide. There you go, that's the word, a guide. Now, so what you do is let me give you another example over here. We're gonna come to this one. All right, let's look at this one here. Same thing we did. We did the line. We did the table, the platform. And if, once again, just to go over it, reiterate, here's the point. You work, you see it, and it works all the way down. All the way down. It's right there. It's right here. Then here, all the way down. It's what? 1, 2, 1.5, 1.5, all the way down. It's the same thing. Okay. So now we're gonna have to put objects in there. How do we do that? Well, remember, it's like when you're doing the grid. You're going from 1 square over here to 2 inches. From the ratio was from 1 to 2. So whatever you would see in this square in your original drawing, in the original picture, you have to manipulate it and put it into a 2-inch paint drawing over here. Now, the same premise. So what you have to do, let's say, for example, let's look at this corner right here, this point. You work your way down. As you work your way down right here. So it's like, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's gonna be 4.5 because if we go all the way down, 4 3/4, 4 3/4 because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 3/4. Maybe a little bit off, a little smudge, but it's all right. And then you work your way. Okay, well then if that's where we're gonna put this. Well, what about the height? 1, 2, and a little bit more, 2 1/4. So you do 1, 2 1/4, and it's right there. So essentially what you're doing is, instead of putting all the grids, the vertical and horizontals, you're taking those off and you're just trying to make a little point here and there. It's quite simple to make, guys. This is simple stuff. So let's look at another one. Let's look at here, the cylinder. If you look at the cylinder, look at this marking and look where it goes. Here's the marking. Here's that marking right there. Well, we got to figure out where the bottom part is. So we look at this. Remember, you look at the vertical, and that's maybe 1 1/4 or 1 1/3. So you do 1 1/3. It's right there. That's the bottom. The lines run this way and that way, this way and that way. So in other words, you just have to, you're not going to be able to replicate it perfectly because we're not machines, but it will get you close enough to where people, so in other words, where it's not going to look weird because the proportions will be all in relationship to each other. In other words, the proportions, all these proportions will be in relationship to the unit of measure, which is the ball. Now, I could have used another unit of measure. I could have used the cylinder or anything else, but because we're just starting off teaching you this, I'm going to use the ball because of the diameter. The diameter is the same, whether it's vertical, horizontal, diagonal, it doesn't matter. It's the same. So it's easier for us to work with. So once again, now if we're using it with a figure drawing or figure painting, it's the same premise. The unit of measure is the head, and then you use it 1, 2. You've got to get the parameters, the farthest point to the left, and then the farthest point to the right. And in this case, what I did was, we're just going to single out the Leo Kwan image, which is the middle one. So you do this: 1 image, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then the 1, 1, and then you see how it runs down this way. You see how it runs down the elbow. And then the height: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So essentially, I'm doing a grid in my head. I'm doing the grid, and I'm just using the main points as a guide, and that's that. I'm not using all the lines that we do or everything like that. So I hope this works. If you have any questions, email me, and that should be it. As I said, this is a technique that you can use not just for still lifes, but you can use it for figure drawings and for all other even live model drawings as well. Okay, and that's that.